Hello group, Jeff here. I'm going to attempt to show you how I process images out of Mellencamp Sky and into Photoshop. I'm going to use the same image from my last video. It's a DS10cTEC image of M16. This is frame 24 of a stack of 208. So I'll open her up, and you can see the histogram of this image is looking pretty good. I have a little room on the left, which I like, and the colors are almost centered. So we can fix that. But first we're going to rotate the image. I'm going to do a little flip, and then I'm going to do a little rotation, and that's good. So now let's go in and fix this. And I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to call it levels. And the reason why I duplicate the layers is as I go along, it's easier if I make a mistake if I can't fix it in that layer, to just delete the layer and start over. And the other thing I can do is I can just turn the layer off and create another duplicate if I want, and not destroy the layer. So I'm going to go into Image, Adjust, Levels. And how we're going to fix this is I'm going to select the Set Gray Point eyedropper, and I'm going to find a spot in the section of an image that I think is black. And that ain't it. Nor is that. That's not too bad. I'll try one more. Hang on. I will get this. There we go. Sorry folks, took a little longer than normal. So if you look at this, the peak of the colors are more or less centered up much better than they were before. Red is always going to be the most dominant color because that's the most sensitive part of the camera, is the red. Then blue and green are somewhere, generally a lot less. So I just try to center them up in the hump, and I think we're pretty close. So I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to start stretching the image. And if you notice, my left side, I have some room to set my own black point. And to me, that's very important, is controlling that aspect, because I believe that once you set the black, that sets the tone for the rest of the image. That's just me. So how I do that in Mellencamp Sky is I'll kind of overexpose a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. And then I'm using the gamma to get the hump of the histogram in Mellencamp Sky between 30 and 50. And that generally gives me enough room in Photoshop to do my thing. So I will start moving the slider, and I just like to bring the slider to where I think the ramp starts on this left side. Now I'm going to bring the white in. And I'm kind of liking that. And if you notice, our histogram is starting to widen. That's what we want. And the colors are still in the center. Beautiful thing. So I'm going to say OK to this, and we'll take a quickie look at the image. And if you look in here, and you look in here, and you look up here, and you look right there, you can see a little pillar that's starting to come out of the mud. That is awesome. You have to go look at this in the Hubble images. This thing is just a gorgeous little pillar. And I can't believe in a 14-inch scope in my driveway with one of Rock's cameras, I'm getting that. That to me is just amazing. So I'll just click between this level, turn it off, and turn it back on. If you look, you can hardly tell that guy is there. So there's a big difference. And if you look at the histogram, you can see it's widening out. That's what we want. So now I'm going to make another duplicate. And I'm going to call this one curves. And again, this is the way I do things. This is not necessarily the correct way to do things. It's just what I have learned. I've taught myself how to do playing around in Photoshop. So now I'm going to go up to Image, Adjust, Curves. And the first thing I do is click on Auto, because I want to see what it does to the image. And if you notice, the histogram is getting a little wider again. That's a good thing. But I think we're kind of blowing the image out a little bit, so I'm going to make some adjustments. So I'm going to just take this up to maybe here. And I'm going to make another knot there and just bring it down a little bit. And if you notice what we have going here, a little S curve. It's very, very slight, but it's an S curve. That's what we want. So I'm happy with this. My histogram is stretching out beautifully. And I'll just turn off the curve so that you can see what it's done. Where I think it's helped is in the darks. So we're getting a little more definition in the darker areas, and it's helped my little guy right there kind of pop a little bit. But we could stop here, or we can keep going. And I say, let's keep going. So I'm going to make another layer. And I'm going to call this one Camera. And this is my most favorite filter in the world. So now I'm going to select the Camera filter. And what this will do is it'll open up in its own window. And as I'm doing things, we want to pay attention to this histogram right here. So what I like to do is I like to just click on Auto to see what it does. And did you see what the histogram did? Lovely. Just lovely. But it's a little too much for my liking. So what I generally do is we'll kind of toggle back and forth a little bit and find the areas of the image that I think it's kind of hurting. And then I'll back off on exposure a little bit. I'll darken the blacks just a little bit. And I like that. That's not too bad. So now I'm going to give the texture slider a little push. The clarity slider. And you have to be careful of this dehaze. This thing is, it can do some nasty things. if you aren't careful. I just like to give it a little tickle, nothing big. And I kind of like this. We're now getting some more things happening in these areas. My little guy's looking happy. We've really helped this area down in here. And this is, I mean, that that has some depth to it. It's really, this image is really starting to look sweet. So now I'm going to go to the tone curve, and I personally take the shadows down and the darks down, and then the lights I bring back up, almost double of what I took down on the darks and shadows. And this is how I got that 3D look. Now we're really starting to see some depth in this image that was not there in the beginning. And if you look, I have my S-curve again. So that's cool. So now we're going to do a little sharpening. A little noise reduction. Some luminance contrast. And some color. Noise reduction. So if I zoom into this, for all that pushing that I did, I'm at 200%. You will see that there aren't any really funky looking pixels in here. And by funky, I mean they'd be those, that whole rainbow of colors you get with noise. That's not in this. This is all the image. And there's my little guy right there. I can't believe that at all. I just can't. You have to really go look at this image on, go find the Hubble image of the eagle and look at that. It's so cool. And then over, oops, sorry, hit the wrong button. I mean, all these really sharpened up. That node looks like it's floating in air. So this image, oops, going the wrong way here. As far as I'm concerned, we can call this done. So if you look, there's other options available in the camera raw filter. I would not use these because my images come in pretty much the way I want them to come in. So I hardly ever use these. They're there if you want them. So we'll say okay to this. And I'll cycle through. You can see how this image is just got a depth to it that is unbelievable. And it was not there. I'll just cycle between the original and the final. Original and the final. And if you look at the histogram, that's the important thing to me, is how much we've spread the histogram by just playing, 3 simple operations, maybe 6 simple operations. This is just the coolest thing. And this was done in less than, let's see, I forget what this image was. Exposure of 24. So that's 24 times 20 divided by 60. That's 8 minutes of exposure. Unbelievable. I know guys that are narrowband guys that I show them this image and they can't believe it. It's just amazing to me. So that's it, guys. I'll post this up on a link to this up on the group, and if you like what I'm doing, I have a couple of other things that we can do, because what you can see, look at the stars, as the processing went along. The stars got a little bigger. You can mask those stars out by doing a um, oops, color range. And what that color range will do is allow you to select all, if you look, all the bright spots are black. So that's your mask. And you would do that early on in the um, process, and then uh, the stars won't grow. So there's a lot of things you can do. Uh, it really helps on these images. Really helps, because you'll never, is I don't believe personally that there's enough, unless you want to spend a lot of time with that HDR stuff, and Matt seems to have that technique nailed. Um, I don't have that kind of patience, so I try to get my images looking the best I can, and uh, I set my settings up so that I can stretch the image, knowing that uh, knowing what I can do in Photoshop. So I set my settings up based on that. Um, what I want to try to do sometime in the not too distant future is I'm putting this recorder on some of my capture devices, and I can record while I'm capturing. It won't be a broadcast, but I'll throw it up on YouTube, and who's ever interested can see that side of it. So I hope you liked it, and we'll see you on the group.